Yeehaw kachow everybody, my name is VanBradley, and I've been told that in some of my older Civ 6 tutorials, they may have been a little long, I may have repeated myself a little too often, and they might have been a little loud. A lot of YouTube comments saying I yelled at them. I certainly didn't mean to, but here is a quicker and hopefully less loud guide to settling cities in Civilization 6. When you load into a game of Civilization 6, the first and most important decision you are going to make is where to settle your capital city and what you should be looking out for, and I'm here to make that just a little bit easier for you. We are in game with our settler. We're about to settle some cities, but before we do that, I just want to say that Civ 6 is a complicated game. I'm not going to be able to go over every single situation that might arise when you play Civ 6, but I'm going to be able to cover all the basics, so here we go. Settling your capital city is obviously critically important, so I want to start you off with two overarching rules that you should almost never break when you are settling that first city in a game of Civ 6. The first rule is that you should always settle your capital city on a water source. If you don't know how to navigate that, that is all good. You are going to click the 4 key to open up the settler lens. The settler lens is going to put a bunch of cool colors on the map, and it's going to give you a legend in the upper right that will tell you what those colors mean. If you settle on a fresh water tile near a river, near a lake, etc., you will gain +3 housing for that city. If you settle on a coastal tile, so near the ocean, you will gain +1 housing for that city. These housing bonuses are crucial early on, so you want to make sure you are settling your capital city on a source that gives you housing. I cannot remember the last time I settled a capital city not on a water source. In this situation, things are looking good for rule number 1. We got a river for a water source. We have a lake for a water source. So let's move on to overarching rule number 2, which is that you should have your capital city settled either on turn 1 or on turn 2. The quickest way to get behind in a game of Civilization is to not settle your capital and begin actually playing the game. If you see a good city way over here and you have to march your settler to go grab it, that's not very helpful. You want to be able to settle in place, or you can move a tile and settle on the second turn. Settling after that is usually not ideal. Now that we've talked about my 2 overarching rules for settling capital cities, let's move on to things you should be looking for on the map. We're going to start with yields. Because this is a tutorial, I will assume you know nothing about Civilization 6, which is awesome. You are about to learn a whole bunch. When you spawn into the game, the developers don't want you to know anything about the map, so they turn off these yields. If you are not seeing any of these colored dots, you are going to press the Y key. It is going to pop up the yields on the map. You are never going to turn this off. You are going to keep this setting on forever. Whatever yields are on these tiles are accumulated per turn. So this tile is 2 food and 2 production. Every turn your city will gain that. Because this city, the capital city, is in 100% of the turns, whatever yields it can give you, it will be giving you all game. So you want to make sure it's giving you a lot. For reference, 2 tiles like this, 2 food, 2 production, or 3 production, 1 food, or 3 food, 1 production, are typically considered good tiles. If you're seeing 4 little dots on a tile, that's typically fine. Tiles like this are awesome. You have 2 food, 2 production, and 1 culture, huzzah. But if you're looking for yields and you're like, hey, thanks for the tip, but I don't know how many yields I'm looking for, typically tiles with 4 dots of color on it are considered good. It is critical that these yields are in the first ring of tiles that settle around your city. It's all well and good to have great tiles all the way out here. However, if you can't reach those tiles early on, they're not very helpful to you. So you want to make sure it'll be either on the tile you settle or in that first ring around your city. With that being said, I'm going to take my settler, I'm going to move it, I'm going to settle on turn number 2, I'll settle on this good tile right here, and that way my 1 population will be able to work this good tile with the culture over here. Here we are, I have settled Rome. Here are a few more things you should be looking for in your capital city. By use of some black magic hackery, I'm going to spawn myself some builders in this empire so I can show you some of the things I want you to be on the lookout for. If you see anything weird like units randomly spawning or tech trees randomly being moved through, it's just so I can make this video for you. The next thing you should be looking for are a couple of tiles you can harvest into your empire for that early production. In every game, there's going to be something you want to build really quickly, and having a couple of tiles with woods or rainforest you can remove will make that better. I've given myself every technology for the purpose of this video, but early on you have mining, which will allow you to remove woods, and bronze working here, which will allow you to remove rainforest. They will each give you yields for doing so. Now you want to be careful with these because harvesting the resources will actually remove some yields from the tile, but it's better to have that production or food or whatever right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to find something we really want. In this case, it is going to be the Oracle. That is a wonder I really love. I'm going to place it down here, and I'm going to use these 2 tiles to chop the production into it. If you've never done this before, you're going to click your builder. You're going to go here to remove a resource. It'll give you an amount of production. I'm going to use that production to chop into the Oracle. Oh my God. And now I have to click through all of these. God damn. I'm still clicking, baby. I'm still clicking through all of them. You can't slow me down. Anyways, as you can see, my removal of that woods gave me production towards the Oracle, a thing that I really want. This can be a very good way to get some tempo into the game, to build some really critical things early. So you want to make sure you have a couple of tiles you can use to do that. In order to chop production, you are going to want woods, so these tiles right here, and you're going to want some quarries. You can get rid of this rock as well with masonry. That's a good way to get some early production. The next thing you want to look for are some great districting opportunities. Because the city is going to be in the game the longest, it's likely to have a pretty high population by the end, which means it's likely to have a ton of districts. Those districts work well together, so make sure you have something you can work with. You'll get better at this as you go along, as you play more Civ, but for instance, right now, really quickly, I got a really good campus here. I can plop that down. I got a decent commercial hub here once I get rid of that stone, so that'll be great. I can put a decent government plaza. Ooh, maybe right here we can put a government plaza. And then next to the Oracle for that extra +2, maybe I'll put the theater square there. And boom, we have a couple of really good districts in our first city, so this passes the test. You just want to make sure you have some good districts you can work with in your capital city. And finally, the last thing that you want to take a look out for in your capital city are some luxury resources, whether they're in the first ring or the second ring. You just want an early luxury resource for two reasons. You can work this luxury resource to get the yields from it, which is awesome. You can have the amenities come through for your Civ as well, but you can also trade them for lots of money early on. You've settled your capital city on the first couple of turns. It's on a water source. You got some yields. You got some districting options. You got some luxury resources. You got a couple of chops to get some critical things cut out nice and early. Let's move on to settling your second and third city. In your game, you're probably going to build a second settler. In my game, I'm going to spawn one out of the clouds just to make this a little bit easier for me. But what I've done is I've tried to create a reasonable approximation of the map as you would see it when you're settling your second and third city. The reason why we're doing cities 2 and 3 together is because these are typically the settlers you get before your government plaza buildings go in. In almost every game, I have a goal of having 3 cities down by turn 50. So settlers 2 and 3 are coming thick and they're coming fast. After that, you can take a little bit of a pause, but you want to get those second and third cities down quickly. So here's how we're going to go about it. In your second and third city, you are still worried about all the same things as you are in the capital. Yields, districts, etc. I don't want to repeat myself. Just know that all of that advice still applies. But now we're going to add a few different layers to it. I play on deity, so often the AI tries to ruin my life very quickly, and so I like to have my second and third city go pretty close to my capital so I can defend them easier. One of the things I look for is synergy with the capital. It's not possible in every game, but sometimes you want to synergize your districts. Let's say I plopped a city down here on this iron. Huzzah, I'm going to collect that without even building a mine. Huge win. I could then use this government plaza in this city. So I could, plop down another commercial hub in this city here. That'll make all of this a little bit better. I could maybe plop down an industrial zone over here, and that'll get affected by the government plaza. And so being able to synergize between these two cities is kind of nice. Another thing you're looking for in cities 2 and 3 that you might not be looking for in city 1 is anything strictly necessary for your victory condition. You don't want to rely on having your 4th to 12th cities or whatever be critical to your victory condition. They might be, but you kind of want everything you absolutely need to be in your first couple of cities because you can control that more easily. They are going to be bigger cities with more districts, with more yields. They're going to be easier to manage for you, so you want to make sure anything critical is inside of them. Let's say I was going for a science victory. If I go for a science victory, one of the wonders I'm going to want is the Ruhr Valley. It's going to give me a whole bunch of production that I can use towards my space projects later in the game. So I want to make sure in this city here, I at least have a reasonable way of chucking down an industrial zone here and then putting the Ruhr Valley right here. Can I do this while talking? Oh my goodness, I can. And then I can get a whole bunch of mine tiles on these hills, and this will be a great Ruhr Valley city, right? I want to make sure I plan out a spaceport because I'll need that for my victory condition as well. So we'll chuck a spaceport down here. This is something you'll get better at as you play more Civ. You'll know what things you like and want and need for your victory conditions. But if I'm doing a science victory, I know I'm going to need a spaceport. I know I'm going to need a Ruhr Valley. And so I want those two things to be accessible in my first couple of cities, which I have maximum control over. We've got our second and third city down. I'm not going to lie, this city's actually pretty bad overall. But hey, you got to work with the map you got. This is the map we got. A reasonable second and third city have been placed down. Iridium is better than Kumai, but that's all good. Let's talk about our 4th to 7th cities. With cities 4 through 7, you want to have them down by around turn 125 to 150, depending on how you play, etc. This means they're not going to be in the game for the whole time, so we can have a few different considerations with cities 4 through 7. You still want them to be good cities that can give you yields that are settled on water, etc. But we can take a little bit of a different point of view now, because these 3 cities we've set up to be amazing and necessary. These cities can serve a different function. The first is that we don't need to be worried strictly about how amazing the districts are. The further you get into the game, the less likely your later cities are going to have a high population, which means they are not going to have a ton of districts available. And so from 4 through 7, bank on 3 or 4 districts, right? So I come here, I can get a good campus. Let's do that. I can get a reasonable commercial hub, maybe. Let's do that. Maybe I want to round things out with a theater square. I'm not really sure. Pick your poison, get your districts down. But I can rely on having 3 districts. If you end up with a high population and more, great. But you're not overdoing it like you are in your first couple cities, where you're routinely going to get 5 or 6 available options. And so you can settle a city still on water, still with good yields, still taking up a good chunk of the map, but with only a couple of districts. So we're not as concerned about the amount of good districts in these cities. This means you might want to take a punt on a city that's slightly worse in some of the rules we've talked about. But if I settle on this T here, I'm on water. The yields aren't great. These mountains aren't going to give me anything, but I do have a really, really good campus over here. This might be the kind of play you want to make, where in your fourth city, you're not going to have a ton of good districts. You can make these yields better, but they don't need to be amazing, because they're going to provide you with something awesome in this campus, so they can be a little more specialized. Because we've set up our first 3 cities to be the engine of our empire, to have everything we need for that victory condition, we can also start considering what the enemy is doing in their game, right? We've set up ourselves, we need more cities. I've never played a game of Civ where I've settled less than 7, right? So we still need more cities, but because I've got 3 really great ones, I can now come and focus on my enemy. Maybe what I want to do is settle over here to take up this land away from the enemy. By this point in the game, you've also come down to engineering and researched aqueducts, which will give you that housing boost if you don't settle on water. I still recommend it. I very rarely settle my cities off water. However, you could do something like this. You could come over here and say, you know what? I want to take this giant chunk of land away from Genghis Khan here. So if I settle a city right here like this, and I aqueduct it into the mountain for the housing boost. Now that's a really good city right in the middle, tons of yields, good housing. Then it makes it harder for him to come down here, right? It gives you more available space later if you want to settle a city down here. You'll get better at this as you go along, but being able to take space away from your enemies can sometimes be the whole function of a fourth city. The next thing we can now start to consider from your fourth city onwards is a continent split right here. If you press the number 2 key, you are going to see different continents on the map. And you might be wondering, why is this important for settling cities? Each continent has 4 unique luxury resources on it that you can't find on the other continents. So if you have cities on multiple continents, even if they're not the most amazing cities, if they can give you luxury resources you don't have access to otherwise, they might be worth it in the end. So we can start considering whether we want to settle cities on other continents. This is probably closer to your 7th city rather than your 4th, but it's in this block of cities here, are strategic resources. The reason why you can't consider these early on is that you don't actually unlock their visibility until you research them in the map. So around city 4 through 7, you're probably up to around niter, right? So if I look at the map here and I don't have any niter around, but I know that I'm going to need niter because I want to use, musketman units to defeat the enemy or whatever, maybe this city seems a lot more appealing now in this block of cities because there's a niter block there for us to grab. Gathering strategic resources is very difficult if they are not in your cities, and so it's always good if you know you're going to need them to take a look around once you unlock them and see what's available. And if I need niter, this seems like the most available one, so maybe I'll prioritize this over here. And the final thing I would consider in cities 4 through 7 is creating specialized districts just around your victory condition. If you are playing a culture victory and you know you're going to want some really good theater squares, maybe settling up a couple cities like this where there's nothing inherently amazing about them, but you settle one over here. Maybe I want to artificially set up some good theater squares, so I'll put an entertainment complex here. I'll put an entertainment complex, whatever, here. And then, oh my goodness, I can't even click properly. And then this city's theater square can go here. This city's theater square can go here. And there you go, voila, you have a couple of good theater squares kind of made out of nothing. The reason why this is important is you will need a bunch of districts for your victory condition. Because these cities will be able to build less and less districts, they need to become a little more specialized, and so you want to go for the districts you really need for your victory. This is great because they'll give you more of the yields. If you need a lot of culture, this will give you a lot of culture, but districts also give you great person points. So if I'm going for a science victory, for instance, and I come here and I come to a campus, right? The campus is going to give me, where is it here? Great scientist points? Where are you telling me this? Here it is, +1 great scientist point per turn. So by the time you start getting to these later cities, it's worth building districts. You want them to be good, but kind of just for the sake of building them for the great person points so you can start getting some of these wonderful boosts here. For cities 4 through 7, I still want you to be concerned about all the stuff we've talked about, good districts, yields, rivers, water, etc. However, I want you to add that little bit of customizability to these ones, right? Maybe you're blocking off enemies, maybe you're coming to second continents, maybe you're looking out for strategic resources, maybe you're kind of artificially building some districts for your victory condition. These cities, while still needing to be good, again, I've never played a game of Civ really where I've settled less than 7. You still want 7 cities, right? They can be a little more specialized, a little more customized, a little less reliant on just being inherently awesome, and a little more reliant on you kind of fiddling with them to get exactly what you need out of them. Now, finally, let's talk about cities 8 through 12. This is an average game of Civ for me. It's one we played on stream recently, and one that you can watch the YouTube videos of on this channel, where we won a culture victory as Jinga and Bandi. We have our good cities here. You can see the first couple cities we settled are amazing. Tons of wonders, tons of districts, freshwater yields, all the stuff we talked about. But I want to talk about cities 8 through 12. Now, you're going to usually want around 10 cities in a game of Civ, right? But what are these other cities doing? By the time you get late in the game, you'll see in Banza Wembo here, there's not a lot going on. I settled it here to collect some of these yields from the Wonder, which is quite nice. I've specialized the one district I needed from it, which was a good holy site, so we talked about specialization. And I came here for the strategic resources. There's some oil here. We never ended up needing it, but I wanted access to oil, and so we came over here. There's oil, there's aluminum, there's some good resources here that I won't have otherwise, and so this city makes sense as a later game city that's not really connected to anything else, but still highly specialized for what I needed. But we're talking one district that you need, a couple of resources that you need. It's taking up land that I don't want to give to the enemy, so that can be really important. Over here we have another good example. Katongo, you might be wondering, what is it doing for you? There's no districts here. It's not really connected to anything. It's doing two things. One, it's sucking up this land from Spain. So even if I don't want this city, it's not very helpful to me. What can be good is just taking up this land from Spain. Civ 6 happens to be a game that is better played wide than tall. It is almost always better to have more cities than fewer, and so this makes sense. Also, going for a culture victory, I needed national parks, which is there it is right here. I needed some high appeal tiles to build national parks in. We can talk about those in a different video, but I didn't really have that in my empire. All of these cities have worked tiles. I'm building stuff on them. I'm getting yields. There's districts, whatever, but national parks need fresh, unused tiles. So where else am I going to go? I got to settle a new city for those fresh, unused tiles. It's still providing a critical service for my victory condition, but it's very one note. Once you get to cities 8 through 12, they're still very important. They're still doing a lot for you, but it's not everything, right? You're picking a couple of things like national parks or the oil or this holy site here, and you're making sure that those cities are doing the one thing they need you to, or you need from them, and they're doing it really well. Before I leave, you might be asking yourself, but VanBradley, how am I going to get all of these settlers to build all of these cities? For the first couple, you're just going to build settlers like normal. However, once you kind of get past that, there are a couple of good options for you. In your first 2 or 3 cities, you are always going to have a government plaza. That's a different video to explain what those do. But in that government plaza, you will get government plaza buildings. If you come to these government plaza buildings here, they will give you an option of a couple different ones to build. The one you are looking for is Ancestral Hall. This will give you a 50% increased production towards settlers in the city. This is very powerful to do early on. I typically get this before I start building settlers 4 through 7. So I get the first 3, I build Ancestral Hall, then I can build a bunch of settlers really quickly after that. You can get this settler production, and you can also use the settler production card that you grab early on. Let me just show it to you here. It's in Early Empire plus 50% production towards settlers. You can use those two together and get some really cheap builds for your settlers. Alternatively, you can do what I'm going to do in this game as well. You can come in here, and if you have a golden age, there's a couple requirements for this. You need a golden age, and you need about 20 faith per turn or more. We have 200 in this game as Ethiopia. You're going to come into Monumentality. It will allow you to purchase civilian units with faith. So you come in here, right, and now you have a ton of faith. And then you come into your cities and you go, ooh, I want a settler. And boom, you can just buy a settler. And then when you're done with that settler, you can just come in here. And as long as you have a ton of faith, you can just buy another settler. And then when you're bored of that and you're kind of done there, you can just come here and you can just buy another settler. And in one turn, I gained 3 settlers, and you can see how overpowered this is. So you have some faith and you have a golden age. Please choose Monumentality. And the settlers are just the start of it. There's a whole bunch of builder stuff we can talk about in another video. But those are the 2 ways early on in every game of Civ where you can acquire the settlers. This one's a little more specialized with the faith-based trick, but the one where you're building your government plaza and getting ancestral hall is nice and easy breezy, beautiful cover goal. You can do that in every game if you want. That's it. That's all, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. Is this a perfect guide to settling cities? No. Is anybody ever going to be able to cover every eventuality in a game of Civ? No. I didn't even cover the Civs that have specialized things you're looking for, like Mansa Musa liking desert maps or Canada liking tundra maps, etc. Maybe we can do that in a different video. I appreciate your time today, though. I hope it was quicker and less loud than the last time I talked about this. If you have any comments, leave them below. Check out the Discord, check out the merch, check out everything in the description. I would appreciate that. Subscribe if you had a good time and want to stick around for more Civilization videos. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.